Namaste. In the previous class, we looked at the various methods of preparation of haloalkanes and haloarenes. We ended with halogen exchange, where we studied two significant reactions, Finkelstein reaction and Schwarz reaction. Once we looked at how to prepare, our next task is to answer the question why. Now, why do we need to study these compounds? Now, under this category why, we will be focusing on two aspects, the properties. Now, under properties, we look at both physical properties as well as chemical properties. Then we will look at the uses of these compounds to the common man, and where do we use them on a daily basis. Shall we begin? All right. Physical properties. Now, when we talk about physical properties, we are talking about boiling points, we're talking about melting points, we're talking about the solubility, we're talking about density and all that. I want you to take this as homework. Physical properties of haloalkanes and haloarenes. Write a note on that, take it as homework. Let's come to the chemical properties. When we talk about the chemical properties, we are focusing on what kind of compounds do they react with, how do they react, and what are the products obtained. So this is the way in which we'll be looking at the chemical properties. When we look at the chemical properties of haloalkanes basically show three kinds of properties as shown. The first one is called as nucleophilic substitution. The second one is called as elimination. And the third one is reaction with metals. So nucleophilic substitution, elimination, and reaction with metal. So these are the three broad areas under which we will be understanding the various chemical properties of haloalkanes. Let's start with the first chemical property, which is called as nucleophilic substitution. Now, before we go into the reaction, let us understand this term nucleophilic. Now, remember, in the first year, when we got introduced to the basics of bond cleavage, we said that the bond can be broken in two different ways. Which are the two ways? Yes, homolysis and heterolysis. Now, in homolysis, the bond is cleaved exactly at the center, whereby each atom gets an electron, forming free radicals. On the other hand, if the bond is broken unequally or towards any one particular atom, then such a cleavage is called as heterolysis. Heterolysis leads to the formation of ions. The atom which gets both the electrons of that bond is called as a negatively charged ion or an anion. The atom which does not get any electrons is called as a positively charged ion or a cation. Now, negatively charged species naturally are attracted to somebody who is positive, because remember, long time back we studied like charges repel each other, unlike charges attract each other. So all these charges, they tend to get attracted towards the oppositely charged ones. Now, coming to the anions tend to get attracted towards somebody who is positive. Now, in an atom, who is positive? Yes, a proton is positive. Where is a proton present? Proton is present in the nucleus. So, therefore, a nucleus is positively charged. Hence, anions are those species which contain a negative charge. They are also called as nucleophiles. The word nucleophile can be broken into two parts, nucleo and phile. Phile means to like. Phile means what? To like. Nucleo means it's coming from the nucleus. Nucleus is positively charged. So when I put these two words together, nucleo and phile, I get the word nucleophile, which means somebody who likes positively charges. Now, who likes positive charges? Of course, somebody who is negatively charged or somebody who is deficient in electrons. Such species are called as nucleophiles. What is the opposite of that? Electrophiles. Electro means something to do with electrons. What is the charge on the electron? It's negatively charged. So somebody who gets attracted to negatively charged should be positive. So cations are also called as electrophiles. Clear? Now let's look at this reaction here. This reaction says nucleophilic substitution. Now we have already studied what substitution means. Substitution reaction is a reaction where during the course of the reaction, if somebody goes out, in place of that person, somebody else comes in. If an atom X goes out, in place of an atom X, Y comes in. So this is what is called as a substitution reaction. So nucleophilic substitution means it has to do something with substitution of a nucleophile. So let's try to understand what's happening here. But before that, I want you to look at the nature of the alkyl halide. Now for the alkyl halide, let me write the general structure Rx. Clear? Now in Rx, R is nothing but carbon. Now one thing that you can observe here is carbon is bonded to halogen. Who's more electronegative? Yes, halogen is more electronegative than carbon. Because of which, what happens? Yes, we studied an effect called as inductive effect in the last year. Whenever there is difference in electronegativities, the atom that is more electronegative pulls the shared pair of electrons towards itself. It pulls these two electrons towards itself. The moment it pulls these two electrons towards itself, X will get a partial negative charge because the electron density around X is more. Then what about the carbon? The carbon, because the electrons are moving away from the carbon, away from the bond towards halogen, the electron density on carbon will be less. Therefore, R will get a partial positive charge. Clear? So this results in polarity. This results in what? Polarity. Rx is a polar compound. A polar compound is a compound where you have two opposite charges in the same molecule. Now, why did we define this? We defined this because we need to know who is the nucleophile going to attack, whether it is going to attack the R group or the carbon atom, or whether it is going to attack the halogen. Now, naturally, the moment we said it's a nucleophile, what does it like? It likes positively charged centers. So, therefore, a nucleophile will have a tendency to attack the carbon atom. Clear? So, that is what is mentioned here. A nucleophile is just indicated by a species Y minus. It has a negative charge, excess of electrons. So therefore, it gets attracted to somebody who is positively charged. Hence, it is a nucleophile. Now, we already defined this. R and X. R gets delta plus, X gets delta minus because of inductive effect. So naturally, Y minus will attack whom? Y minus will attack R. Now, Y can form a bond with R. Now, why can it form a bond with R? Because it has a pair of electrons here. This negative charge indicates a pair of electrons, and for the formation of bond, how many electrons are needed? Yes, 2 electrons are needed. These 2 electrons will be used to form a bond with R. Now, what is the problem the moment it forms a bond with R? Yes, this carbon's valency will not be satisfied. Carbon should have how many bonds around it? 4 bonds around it. Now, in the case of Rx, when it was here, it had 4 bonds around it. But the moment Y formed a bond with R, it has 5 bonds around it. So what should happen? One of the bonds should break. Now, which bond will break? This bond will break, and these two electrons of the bond will go on X. X will go out as X minus. Clear? X goes out as X minus, and Y minus forms a bond with R to form this compound RY. X minus is called as the leaving group. So naturally, why is it called as a leaving group? It's called as a leaving group because it is the one which is going out of the alkyl halide. Clear? What's happened here? In place of the halogen, the nucleophile has come in. Got that? In place of whom? In place of the halogen X, during the course of this reaction, the nucleophile has come in. Hence, this reaction is called as nucleophilic substitution reaction. Clear? So let me repeat once again. An alkyl halide is polar. Why is it polar? Because of inductive effect. R is positively charged, X is negatively charged. A nucleophile which is negatively charged or having excess electrons will attack the carbon atom which is positively charged and forms a bond with that. The moment the bond is formed, somebody has to leave because carbon cannot have 5 bonds around it. The one who leaves is the halogen. Since it leaves, it's called as the leaving group. In place of the halogen, who gets substituted? Y gets substituted. And what was Y before? Y was a nucleophile. Since a nucleophile gets substituted in place of a halogen, this reaction is called as what? Nucleophilic substitution reaction. Clear? When we look at the relative reactivity of alkyl halides for the same alkyl group, clear, who reacts faster, Ri will be more reactive than RBr, which will in turn be more reactive than RCl, which will in turn be more reactive than RF. So you need to remember this. If I have to compare the reactivity of alkyl halides having the same R group but different halogens, who will react faster with Y? It follows this order. Ri is more reactive than RBr, which is in turn more reactive than RCl, which is in turn more reactive than RF. Ri, in Ri, iodide is a very good leaving group. So I minus can leave easily compared to F minus. Hence we see this order. And why can it leave? Because again, electronegativity differences. Electronegativity of iodine is the least. Electronegativity of fluoride is the highest. Clear? All right. Now this is a table. This table talks about the general reaction that we studied. What all compounds can undergo electronucleophilic substitution. Depending upon what reagent, this talks about the nucleophile and what is the product that's obtained and name of the product. Clear? This table gives you a complete picture as to who all can give the nucleophile. Let me take a couple of examples so that you understand. I will not be going into the entire list here, but I'll just be focusing on certain aspects. NaOH. Clear? Now, if I take NaOH or KOH, this will give me the nucleophile OH minus because it breaks to give what? Na plus OH minus. So OH minus is the nucleophile. If OH minus is the nucleophile, what is the product obtained? ROH. Clear? So if I go back, if this Y is OH minus, clear? And if X goes out, in place of X, who's coming in? OH minus is coming in. So what will this product be? Yes, ROH, which is nothing but what? Alcohol. So you understood this? Yes. So if I take NaOH or KOH, OH minus is the nucleophile. The final product obtained is an alcohol. Clear? If I take water, water behaves as a nucleophile. Why will water behave as a nucleophile? Water does not have a negative charge, or water is not ionic. Water behaves as a nucleophile because oxygen has a lone pair. There is excess of electrons. Using the lone pair, it will attack the carbon atom. The product obtained is again an alcohol. So like that, you have various things here. I want you to focus on these two and these two. Clear? KCN, AgCN, KNO2, AgNO2. Clear? Now, I want you to look at the products obtained. If KCN reacts with Rx, product obtained is RCN, which means Cn minus is the nucleophile. Whereas when AgCN reacts with Rx, the product obtained is RNC. It's an isocyanide. Here the bond between R and carbon is formed. Here the bond is formed between R and nitrogen. That's what's obtained when I take AgCN. Now let's look at KNO2. In KNO2, the compound obtained is RONO, which means the bond is formed between R and oxygen. Whereas when I take AgNO2, the bond is formed between R and nitrogen. It is not between oxygen. Clear? So you can see a clear difference between these two species. I want you to take this as homework. Find out why KCN forms a cyanide, why AgCN forms an isocyanide. Same way, why KNO2 forms a nitrite, AgNO2 forms a nitroalkane. Clear? So I want you to take this as homework. This has been asked a lot of times uh, in competitive and a couple of times in PU as well. Why will KCN give a cyanide while AgCN give an isocyanide? Clear? So it's available in your textbook. I want you to explore that, find out what's the answer, and take it as homework. So this is the second homework for today. Clear? Now coming to what is extremely important. Now whatever I'm going to teach you in the next few slides will surely be asked. It will be asked. Sir, what is the probability of it coming in the final exam? 250%, which literally means that it will be asked. So I want your complete focus on what we'll be going to do in the next few set of slides. We will have to focus on the mechanism of nucleophilic substitution reaction. Now we just looked at the general reaction, how it actually happens. Now we need to look at what are the various steps involved. How does it actually take place via the mechanism? Nucleophilic substitution can happen via two mechanisms. Which are the two mechanisms? SN2 and SN1. Clear? So let me just repeat it for you. Nucleophilic substitution reaction, which we just saw, can happen via two mechanisms. The two mechanisms are SN2 and SN1. One out of these two is surely going to be asked in your exam. Either SN2 or SN1, or differentiate between SN1 and SN2. So out of these three questions, one question for sure. Clear? So what I'm going to do today and probably the beginning of the next class, I want you to completely focus because it's extremely important. It will be asked. So I'll mark this as important. Now, what are the points of discussion? Now, what will we be discussing in the mechanism? We will look at what is the definition of the nucleophilic substitution. We said SN1, SN2, right? We'll try to understand what does that SN1, SN2 actually mean. Then we will talk about the rate equation. For that reaction, what is the rate equation? What is the dependence of rate on the reactions? Clear? Then we'll talk about order of reactivity of halides. Do all the halides react the same way? with respect to SN1, SN2, or is there a difference? We look at that. We look at the steps involved. What are the various steps involved in the particular mechanism? Then we look at the strength of the nucleophile. What should be the strength of the nucleophile that is used? Then we'll also look at the solvent. What kind of solvent is used in SN1? What kind of solvent is used in SN2? Then we will focus our attention on the products. What are the kinds of products that are formed? And finally, we look at the stereochemistry of the products. Clear? So this is what is going to be our points of discussion. So I want you to look at this slide. Let me go through this slide once again. This is extremely important. These are the points that you need to mention whenever you're writing the answer with respect to any of the questions that I told you before. The first thing that we need to focus on is the definition. What is the definition of that particular nucleophilic substitution? What does SN1 mean? What does SN2 mean? Rate equation. Dependence of rate on the reactants. We look at what is the rate equation in both SN1 and SN2. We look at the order of reactivity of halides. Who reacts faster? Who reacts slowly? Who does not react at all? All that we will understand. Steps involved in either SN1 or SN2. Strength of the nucleophile that is used for SN1 and SN2. Solvent that is used. The products obtained. And finally, the stereochemistry of the products. Clear? So this is the broad outline with which we will be looking at each of the mechanisms. So are we good to go? All right. So as I told you, from the next slide, I want your complete attention towards the screen. The first mechanism is called as SN2 mechanism. SN2 mechanism. Now, what does SN2 mean? SN2 means nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. Let me repeat. SN2 stands for what? Nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. Clear? Talks about something called as molecular, bimolecular. So let us try to understand that once we look at the mechanism. Now in this mechanism, what basically happens is I have an alkyl halide here. This is the simplest alkyl halide, CH3Br. The nucleophile wants to attack this alkyl halide. It tries to come from the front. Now, if this is the front side and if this is the back side, it tries to come from the front. Is it possible to attack from the front, attack this carbon atom from the front side? It is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because I already have a bromine, which is also negatively charged. This nucleophile is what charged? Of course, this nucleophile is also negatively charged. So the moment it is trying to approach the carbon from the side of the halogen, it's difficult. What happens to it? Yes, it gets repelled away. Why does it get repelled away? Because like charges repel each other. The moment OH minus wants to come and attack the carbon from this side, it is pushed back. Who is pushing that back? The bromine is pushing that back because bromine is negatively charged. So this side of the attack is not possible, or the attack is not possible from the front side. Now if it cannot attack from the front side, what will the nucleophile do? It will go all the way and attack from behind. It will go all the way and attack from the opposite side of where the halogen is. Clear? So let me just repeat it. I want you to focus. The nucleophile cannot attack the carbon on the same side of the halogen. Why can't it attack on the same side of the halogen? Because halogen is also negatively charged. The nucleophile is also negatively charged. The moment it tries to come closer to this carbon, it is pushed back. It is repelled. Why? like charges repel each other. Because of this repulsion, it cannot attack the carbon from the front side or the side in which the halogen is there. Therefore, the nucleophile attacks from the back side or the opposite side of the halogen. You got that? So this is the first point that I want you to understand. So therefore, it attacks the carbon atom here from the side opposite of the halogen. All right. So it prefers the backside attack. Now, after the backside attack, can it form a bond? Yes, it can form a bond. Why can it form a bond? Because the nucleophile has a pair of electrons. It has excess electrons with which it can form a bond with this carbon atom. But is it so easy? No, it is not. Before giving the final product, which is this, there is a transition state that is formed. The moment the nucleophile attacks the carbon, a state called as the transition state is formed. Now, what do you mean by the transition state? The transition state is mentioned here. I want you to just observe the transition state for a moment. Observe the state for a moment. What do you see? You can see that there are partial bonds here. Can you see partial bonds? Yes. Between who and whom are the partial bonds? There are partial bonds between carbon and halogen. There are partial bonds between carbon and nucleophile. Clear? Which means this bond is not completely formed and this bond is not completely broken. Such a state is called as a transition state. Such a state is called as what? Transition state. Clear? So what is a transition state? A transition state is a state where the bond between carbon and the halogen is not completely broken and the bond between carbon and the nucleophile is not completely formed. That's what is indicated by the dotted lines. Now you can understand this in the form of a fight. The bromine is already there. Was bromine already there? Formed a bond with a carbon? Yes. Now who's coming in? OH minus. So this is competition. Bromine does not want to go out. At the same time, OH also wants to form a bond. That particular state where they are fighting with each other is called as the transition state. Now when you observe the transition state, does it resemble both the reactant and the product? Observe. Now this is my reactant. This is my product. Clear? I want you to look at the reactant, the product, and the transition state. I told you the transition state resembles both the reactant and the product. Check whether it resembles both the reactant and product. Yes, it does. If I close this OH, clear? If I close this OH and observe, this structure resembles whom? Yes, it resembles the reactant. If I close this Br, this structure resembles whom? Yes, it resembles the product, which means a transition state is a state which is neither the reactant fully nor the product fully, but has characteristics of both reactant and product. Got that? So now we have understood two things about the transition state. The first thing is, in a transition state, the carbon nucleophile bond is not completely formed and the carbon halogen bond is not completely broken. That's the first point that we understood. What is the second point? The transition state resembles both the reactant as well as product. It resembles the reactant, it resembles the product, but not fully. Both the characteristics of reactant as well as product is seen in a transition state. Clear? And one more thing that you will observe here, the transition state is written within brackets. Can you see that the transition state is written within square brackets? Yes. What does this mean? It means that this state cannot be isolated. I cannot get this state. This state is just formed for a few fraction of seconds. I cannot isolate it. I cannot remove it. It is just formed for a fraction of a second, and there is a fight going on between these two. Once the fight is over, I get the product. Clear? Now when you observe the products here, what is removed? Br is removed, which means during the course of this reaction, Br goes out as Br minus. In place of Br minus, who's come in? Yes, OH is come. Clear? OH minus was what? It was a nucleophile. Since a nucleophile has got substituted in place of the halogen, we call this reaction as nucleophilic substitution reaction. Clear? All right. So let's understand one more concept here. Now, we said in the transition state, there is a fight. Now, there is a fight between whom? Yes, there is a fight between Br minus and OH minus. Why are they fighting? They are fighting to form a bond with carbon. Br is saying, no, 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 I was bonded with carbon, I will not break this bond. OH is saying, no, 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 I just came and formed a bond with carbon, I've given electrons, I want to form a bond. Now, who will win in this fight? Yes, the one who is stronger. The one who is stronger in this fight will win. So, if OH minus has to drive out Br minus, what should its nature be? It should be stronger than Br minus. What if OH minus is weaker than Br minus? Then Br minus will say, hey, you get lost. You are weaker. You cannot form a bond with carbon. I will remain with carbon. So if OH minus or any nucleophile has to drive out the halogen during the course of this reaction, what should it be? It should be stronger than the halogen that is already bonded. So is this point very clear? Yes. Then let's look at the product that is obtained. Now I want you to observe the reactant and the product. Here I want you to observe the reactant and the product. Tell me how are they different. Observe. Observe the structures of reactant and product. Tell me how they are different. Yes, one of the differences, sir, in the reactant I have Br, in the product I have OH. So that is probably the first difference that all of you will give me. Other than that, I want you to look at the differences other than that. This also has 3 hydrogens, reactant. The product also has 3 hydrogens. But what is the difference? Yes, if you clearly observe, has the position of hydrogens changed between the reactant and product? Yes. You look at the position of hydrogens here. They are all positioned on this side. Now, once the reaction has happened after the transition state, look at where the hydrogens have gone. Oh, yes, all the hydrogens have gone onto the other side. You got that? You're able to see that? Yes. The halogen was on the right. Where is the nucleophile in the product? It is on the left. Why did this happen? Yes, it happened because of backside attack. The nucleophile attacked the carbon from the backside. Hence, it formed a bond on the other side. Clear? This phenomenon is called as inversion. What is this phenomenon called as? Inversion. The product is inverted when you compare it with the reactant. Product is what? Inverted when you compare it with the reactant. Clear? Inverted means you're able to understand the word invert. Yes, invert means opposite. Oh, I can, let's understand this with an example. Now, in the rainy season, which is not going to be far away, June, July, we'll get to see the rains. What is the first thing that we use? The common thing that we use when we go out? Yes, we use an umbrella. Clear? So we use an umbrella like this. If there are strong winds, what will happen to this umbrella? You would have all seen this in movies, right? When there are songs that are shot in the rain, when the umbrella is being used and there is a lot of wind, what happens to that umbrella? Yes, the umbrella becomes like this. Correct? What's happened from this to this? It is inverted. Clear? The umbrella is inverted. Same thing happens here. If you understand that the direction of hydrogen in the case of the reactant, and when you observe the direction of the hydrogens in the product, they are inverted. This is called as inversion. The product is inverted with respect to the reactant. Clear? Yes? Super. This mechanism is called as SN2 mechanism. So when the question is asked, you need to write all that is there on the slide. So let me repeat it once again. During SN2 mechanism, the nucleophile will not attack from the front side because of repulsion. It will attack from the back side. It will attack the carbon from the back. The moment it attacks, the transition state is formed. Now, what is a transition state? Transition state can be defined with respect to two things. First one, in the transition state, the carbon halogen bond is not completely broken and the carbon nucleophile bond is not completely formed. Point number two, a transition state is a state where it resembles both the reactant and the product, but not fully. It shows characteristics of both the reactant as well as a product. A transition state is a temporary state. It is written within brackets, indicating that it is not a permanent state, it is a temporary state. It is only formed for a few fraction of seconds. And after it's formed, it forms the product. And when you look at the product, the nucleophile is attached on the opposite side of the halogen. It is attached because the bromine was driven away and the nucleophile, since it attacked from the opposite end, it is in the opposite side of the halogen. Hence, the product is inverted in nature. And what should be the nature of the nucleophile? Whether it should be strong or weak compared to the halogen? Yes, it has to be strong compared to the halogen, because only if it is strong can it ask the halogen to go out. If it is not strong, it cannot form a bond with the carbon atom. This mechanism is what is called as SN2 mechanism. Very, very, very important. Now remember, before we started with the mechanism, there was one slide where I spoke about the various points that we need to address, the various points of our discussion. Let's look at each one of those points with respect to SN2. I want you to remember whatever we discussed in the slide, and I want you to apply that when we study the various points. Are we ready? Yes. Okay, the first one is definition. SN2 stands for nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. Nucleophilic substitution bimolecular. Bi means two. Two molecules. It means something to do with two molecules. Let us understand what does it mean. The second point, rate equation. It is second order. Clear? It is a second order reaction. Now there is one more chapter that you will study in physical chemistry this year, which is called as chemical kinetics. Chemical kinetics. Kinetics means something that is in motion. A reaction is always in motion from left to right. So during a course of a reaction, we can talk about how fast or how slow the reaction goes, which is what is given by the rate equation. Clear? So you will understand all that when you do chemical kinetics. So right now, just remember this. The moment you understand the rate equation, order and all in the chemical kinetics, you will be able to understand what you mean by bimolecular, what you mean by second order and all in SN2. So I will not spend time on that right now because that needs more time. So when you understand that in chemical kinetics, we can immediately apply that in SN2 and SN1, of course. Now, second order, where the rate equation is written like this: R is equal to K into concentration of Rx into concentration of nucleophile. Now, what does this equation mean? This equation means that the rate, which is R, rate of this reaction, which is R, is dependent upon concentration of alkyl halide and concentration of nucleophile. So let me repeat. This equation means that the rate of this reaction, how fast or how slow the reaction will proceed, depends upon both concentration of alkyl halide as well as the nucleophile. Now in this rate equation, how many molecules are involved? 1 mole of Rx, 1 mole of Nu, nucleophile. So therefore there are how many molecules? 2 molecules. Hence we use the term bimolecular. Do you understand now? It's bimolecular, nucleophilic substitution bimolecular, because the rate is dependent upon concentration of both alkyl halide as well as the nucleophile as given in the rate equation. Now I know you will not be able to understand this better right now. Once the chapter on chemical kinetics is done, you will be able to better understand what rate equation and what bimolecular means. So right now I've just given you a bird's eye view of that. Let's look at the steps involved. It is a single step mechanism via a transition state. Clear? You're able to understand? Yes. SN2 mechanism is a single step mechanism via a cyclic transition state. Now we already defined what a transition state is. What is a transition state? It is a state where the carbon halogen bond is not completely broken and the carbon nucleophile bond is not completely formed. Clear? All right. Order of reactivity of halides. Now who reacts the fastest? Now this is what is the order. Order is CH3X is more reactive than primary, which is in turn more reactive than secondary, which is in turn more reactive than tertiary. This is the order. Now what does it mean? In SN2, CH3X reacts the fastest. Who reacts the least? Tertiary. Now remember, when we studied types, we looked at primary, secondary, tertiary. What does it mean? Yeah, it's what is given here. If it is primary, the halogen is bonded to a carbon, which is in turn bonded to how many more carbon atoms? One more carbon atom. Such a thing is called as primary. What is secondary? Halogen is bonded to a carbon, which is in turn bonded to two other carbon atoms. That is secondary. What is tertiary? Halogen is bonded to a carbon, which is in turn bonded to three more carbon atoms. This is what is tertiary. Now, why is this order seen? Why not tertiary? Why is tertiary not more reactive compared to CH3X? Let us understand. Now, one thing that we studied in the mechanism was the nucleophile, does it attack from the front side or does it attack from the back side? Yes, it attacks from the back side. So, if it has to attack from the back side, imagine a tertiary alkyl halide. Now, this is a tertiary. Now, all three R groups are big because they're all carbons. Clear? Now, if the nucleophile wants to attack the central carbon, is there space? Space is very, very, very less. Hence, the attack is difficult. Clear? Attack is difficult. Whereas on the other hand, let's look at CH3X here. Clear? In CH3X, now can the nucleophile attack from the backside easily? Yes, it can. Why can it attack? Because all three are hydrogens, which are small. Size of these atoms are small. So there is more space for the nucleophile to come and attack. So this will be most reactive. Nucleophile can easily attack CH3X. Followed by whom? Followed by primary. Primary, in the case of primary, it is difficult than methyl. Why is it difficult? Because one of them is R. R is bigger. But still, it is easier compared to secondary. Why is it difficult in secondary? Because in primary, I only had one R group, whereas in secondary, I have two R groups which are big. Clear? Space inside is difficult, less. So therefore, nucleophile cannot attack easily. But secondary is at least better than tertiary. Why? Because in tertiary, all the three groups are R groups, which are big groups, bulky groups. The nucleophile cannot attack the central carbon easily. Hence, tertiary is least reactive, followed by secondary, followed by primary, and the most reactive is methyl. Clear? You got that? This phenomenon or this concept is called as steric hindrance. Steric means space. We looked at this already in the last year. Steric means space. Hindrance means problem. Now, is there a problem for the nucleophile to attack the carbon? Yes. What is the problem? There is no space. Why is there no space? Because all the three R groups are big groups. They are not allowing the nucleophile, which is also big, to go and attack. Whereas in the case of CH3X, the space is more. Why is the space more? Because the three atoms are hydrogen and hydrogen atom is small, which gives enough space for the nucleophile to go and attack the carbon. You got that? So very important order of reactivity. It follows this order. CH3X, more reactive than primary, more reactive than secondary, more reactive than tertiary because of steric hindrance. Then let's look at the strength of the nucleophile. Now we already defined this, right? What should be the strength of the nucleophile? Should the nucleophile be strong or should it be weak? Yes, the nucleophile should be strong. Now why should the nucleophile be strong? Because it has to do two jobs. It has to attack the carbon. At the same time, it should remove the halogen. And we just said in the transition state, there is a fight going on between the nucleophile and halogen. And who will win? The one who's stronger will win. If the nucleophile has to get substituted in place of the halogen, it has to be stronger than the halogen that is already there. So therefore, the strength of the nucleophile, it should be strong. What should be the solvent that is used in SN2? A non-polar solvent is enough. So a non-polar solvent is okay for SN2 mechanism to happen. Then products obtained. How many products were obtained? Yes, there is only one single product that is obtained. Then stereochemistry of the product. The product is inverted in nature. Did we see that? Yeah, so let me go back here. What is the nature of the product? Is inverted. Why did we say it is inverted? Because the position of the halogen and the position of the nucleophile is exactly opposite. The nucleophile joins the carbon or forms a bond with the carbon on the opposite side of the halogen. We spoke about inversion, the position of hydrogens and all that, right? Yeah, so same thing we are putting it in words. Stereochemistry of the product is the product is inverted, and we call this inversion as Walden inversion. So this inversion that happens during SN2 is called as what? Walden inversion. Clear? So this was SN2 mechanism. So I want you to write SN2 mechanism 3 times. Again, understand why I am giving you a homework. I'm giving you a homework not to burden you. I'm giving you a homework because you need to practice. The more you practice, you become better. And today, the moment you learned this concept, if you practice, it will immediately go stick in your mind. Otherwise, in 10 days, 20 days, you will forget. Clear? So write it 3 times. If this question is asked, it will be asked for 3 or 4 marks. And if this is asked, you need to write everything what I've told you. The equation, the steps involved, transition state, and then all these 8 points you need to write if you want to get 4 marks. Clear? So we will stop here for today. We will continue with the next mechanism. Now, if you have understood SN2, you will be in a better position to understand the next mechanism, which is SN1. Clear? So we will look at SN1 in the next class. In today's class, just focus on understanding SN2 and practicing the same. So until the next class, thank you. Namaste.